We now have the honor of welcome Dr. Adela Meyer. It's a pleasure to have with us, Doctor. May I read your biography?
Yes, absolutely. And not I'm deeply honored to be called doctor, but I do not have a doctorate standing, so Miss is fine.
Sorry.
All worry. No, so not all worries. All good.
Ella Meyer is the Quantum Computing Outreach Coordinator at the UPC, Gearing Up, and at the project manager for the Diversifying Talent in Emerging Technologies program. She graduated with a Bachelor in Science in Astronomy for the University of British Columbia in 2020 and still lives in Vancouver, Canada. Ella has been working in science education and communication for over 4 years in partnership with the industry and academics worldwide, including Microsoft, the Web Systems, and Stuart Bluesom's Quantum Matter Institute, and the Quantum Algorithms Institute. Today, Ella Meyer presents us Diversifying Talent in Emerging Technology. Diversifying talent in emerging technologies has been at the cutting edge of education in Canada for the past 5.5 years, focusing on underrepresented demographics in STEAM. We run summer camps, in-school workshops, local events, professional developments, general public outreach events, and more programs. This style will discuss different modalities and strategy for delivering complicated topics to youth, alongside ways to prioritize and support a wide range of students to want to continue in the field of quantum. Lastly, we will look at how ensure the future is quantum and is also diverse. Thank you, Dr. Meyer. Sorry. Thank you, Meyer. Let you proceed.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And good morning, everybody. Well, it's morning my time zone. I'm not entirely sure what time zones you're on. Wanted to let you know, perfectly happy to have this talk be more conversational. So if you do have questions, please feel free to use the raise hand feature or unmute and ask something. No worries on, interrupting anything. I'd really like to make sure everyone's on the same page. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here. And if someone would kindly let me know when that's visible to everybody.
Yes, we can see.
Awesome. So yeah, I'll be going through a bit of background on our program today. Great. I'm not going to necessarily be able to see the chat super well, so the raise hand feature or unmuting to ask your question is probably the best bet. Awesome. So yes, today we're going to be going through all the different ways that our program has done quantum outreach over the last 5.5 years. And I'll be sort of breaking down what our programs have been, how our different partnerships and collaborations have worked, sort of our thought process behind getting kids to interact with quantum computing, and as well as some sort of feel-good success stories out of that. So first things first, depending on where you are, this may be new to you, this may not. At UBC Gearing Up, we always start our presentations with a land acknowledgement, which is to honor and recognize the Indigenous territory that we are currently on. So UBC Gearing Up is on the traditional, ancestral, and unceded territories of the Musqueam people. The university itself is a guest on this land where generations of people who've called this place home have passed down their stories and culture for thousands of years. UBC is very committed to the uplifting of Indigenous voices and Indigenous culture and stories, and we'll see that more throughout this presentation. And so, yeah, in case you've missed it, this is me. I'm the Quantum Computing Outreach Coordinator here at UBC Gearing Up. And yeah, she, her pronouns if you have questions or want to send anything about that. So as our presentation is going to go, we'll go through quick snapshot, which is jokingly what I've been calling the proving I know what I'm talking about section. Part 2, we're going to look at the program origin, how something like this starts. Part 3, we'll go through sort of our pedagogy and our programs, our thought process going into it, and then how we've gone to deliver it. Part 4, I'll talk about specific focus groups that we've put dedicated energy into supporting in STEM. Part 5, we'll do those feel-good success stories. And part 6 will look at what the future is for this program. So the snapshot, this is I do know what I'm talking about, and I would like to ease any worries you may have off the bat. So over our 5.5 years of running, we've reached over 20,000 total youth. 51% of those have been girls. We've run over 285 events to reach this many youth. This is both in BC, but as well as across Canada. Of that, we've reached over 500 Indigenous youth in over 12 different communities across BC. And again, 50% of those students have been girls as well. If you are less familiar with the geography of BC, as I'm not sure how many people have visited before, it's quite a big province, and a lot of our Indigenous communities are much more rural, remote. And so going to, just for our program, specifically to go to 12 or 13 in a given year is a fairly significant number. And lastly, we've educated over 9,500 general public, including well over 1,200 educators, and we've launched 3 massive online open courses through the learning platform edX. And each of our individual courses has well into the thousands of registration. So that's the snapshot to establish. What I'm about to tell you is a lot of our modalities really work, and we've been having a lot of success with how we've been exploring this so far. So the program origins and sort of where it started versus where we are now is a bit of a journey, but a pretty exciting one. So in 2019, the program started. It was November of that year. Our PI is a man named Lucas Krastowski. If you are in the field of quantum silicate photonics, he is quite prolific here in Canada. And he is one of the principal investigators at the Stuart Blossom Quantum Matter Institute. And he approached UBC Gearing Up, as well as Digital, Microsoft, and D-Wave Systems to discuss what it would be like to have a quantum computing education program focused on youth. And so this group got together, they applied to one of the open funding calls Digital had during that time, and they received a bit less than $400,000 for 3 years of programming. The first program manager, my predecessor's name is Harris, was hired in November of 2019, and immediately they began curriculum development to start for delivery in 2020. As you can imagine, delivery as it was planned in 2019 for 2020 did not go as planned due to the COVID-19 pandemic. So there was a bunch of shifts that had to be made very quickly. So in 2020, we had 5 sessions of in-person delivery in that February, and then rapidly had to switch to fully online programming for basically the next 2 full years. So during that year, we had our first iteration of our online summer camps and different workshops, master classes, trying out just a bunch of different things to see what would stick and what was going to be interesting, as well as not only what children were looking for during that time, but what parents and educators needed for support during a period where a lot of people ended up in more of a homeschool environment than they had probably planned for. From there, 2021, we stayed in that online programming. We had an online masterclass where we had a cohort of about 75 students who did classes together over 6 months to engage with quantum material, like with quantum computing materials. I got more into learning how to code, exploring with IBM Circuit Composer and things like that. We did a second iteration of our online camps, as well as then launching professional development sessions for teachers, because it was during this time that I hadn't quite come on yet. I came in August of 2021, so this just missed me. It was clear to everybody that if you want kids to be able to fully engage with something, there needs to be wraparound supports for that. And so we couldn't just have kids getting really excited about quantum and then no one, in their immediate environment to turn to continue discussion or to continue learning. And so we needed to have more opportunities for teachers to engage with it and to feel really confident in that material as well, so that there was, educator relationships we could build there surrounding quantum. In 2022, we were able to launch back into in-person programming, which was really fun. We had our in-school workshops, which I'll discuss a bit later in terms of how they actually work, but essentially schools will bring in instructors from our camp or from our program to be able to go in and teach workshops on a specific activity. That summer, we also did a mix of in-person and online camps just to sort of accommodate a bunch of different learners. This was also when, due to travel restrictions being lifted and communities being more comfortable welcoming people traveling back into them. This was a lot of the start of our rural Indigenous community partnerships. For my program specifically, it's important to note that Gearing Up as a whole has been running for 30 years and has long-term existing partnerships with a lot of communities, but this was the first time we were bringing quantum specifically into our programming there. And then in that same year, we launched our first massive online open course, or MOOC. It's called Quantum Computing for Your Classroom, and it was specifically focused, again, on that professional development angle for teachers, focused on giving teachers within BC real tangible ways they could bring quantum into their classroom that directly connects with the BC learning competencies for children in different grades. So, for example, if a teacher was teaching Physics 11 or Physics 12, we went through the Physics 11 and Physics 12 curriculum, found specific core pieces of that curriculum, and said, okay, well, this you can actually teach through this, potentially more quantum mechanics example than it's currently being used, or you can do this experiment and it will fully address this competency, but bring in something kind of new and exciting into your classroom. So we looked at that for physics, chemistry, as well as computer science, giving teachers more opportunities to bring in this new technology. 2023, we piloted high school workshops for the first time. Up until this point, we've been focusing on elementary school and middle school grades. And so we were getting more into high school workshops and engagement there. This was also a big year for conferences, collaborations. You all may have experienced it as well, the sort of hunger for travel post all of the lockdowns and wanting to have more connections and collaborations between groups there. This was also the year we launched our second MOOC. So based on our original masterclass, which I mentioned in 2021, we had designed essentially an introduction to quantum computing focused at sort of approximately grade 9, grade 10. And we wanted to take that content, which had been really refined over teaching it through the masterclass, as well as a collaboration with another university. And we wanted to make it more accessible to a wider audience of people. And so we took our introduction to quantum computing, changed some of our examples into be a more general public focused thing, as opposed to kids who love to have memes in their courses. And instead, we were able to sort of adultify or make that just more general public accessible and launch Introduction to Quantum Computing on edX. Last time I checked, that course has over 4,000 folks who've taken it. And that's been really wonderful. It's been a really cool process. Shifting to 2024, we expanded again our workshop offerings to a wider grade range. We also got to start working not only in having quantum activities in all of our different, many of our different camps, but we introduced a levitation track to the camp science show. So all of our camps get to attend a science show on it's Thursdays. It's part of their camp programming, and the Stuart Blessing Quantum Matter Institute, or QMI, very kindly lent me a levitation track that they have. It's a superconductor, like puck called YBCO, and it looks actually exactly like a racetrack of magnets. And when the superconductor is cooled, you can float it around the magnetic track. I learned recently that many of the kids started calling it the ghost train, and they were very excited when it was coming to camp. And so that was a really cool way to run a frankly complex demo. Superconducting is not necessarily an easy topic to a wide range of kids as young as grade 1, and to have them be extremely excited about it, wanting to learn more, asking really cool questions. And then that sort of helped to accompany the quantum focus programming different camps were doing in different activities throughout the week. Lastly, this in 2024, we launched our third MOOC, which was frankly mostly a passion project of mine. I wanted to have an introduction to quantum mechanics that was as low math as one could make an approach to quantum
Sorry,
mechanics.
Ella, we can hear you.
Yeah.
Ah, yeah.
Oh, you can't hear me?
Yeah, now we can hear you.
Oh, well, when did I cut off?
Finally, in 2024.
Oh, okay. Sorry about that. Finally, in 2024, yeah, we expanded our workshop offerings to a wider grade range. So we had high school and middle school, as well as late elementary school workshops. So approaching a wider group there. We introduced the levitation track to our science show, which is so in our week-long summer camps that we have, all the kids get together on Thursdays in a big lecture hall, and we show them a bunch of really cool science experiments. And the good folks at the Stuart Blesson Quantum Matter Institute, or QMI, would weekly lend me this levitation track. The levitation track is a quite literally like an oblong race course made out of magnets that when you take a piece of superconductor and cool it, you're able to then place it over the magnets and it will float because of the superconducting properties of repelling the magnetic field. And because you've dunked it in liquid nitrogen to get it into its superconducting state before you put it over the magnets, it lets off this quite ghostly stream of vapor. And I found out recently, apparently, many of the younger kids were calling it the ghost train, and they were very excited to see the ghost train make an appearance in science show. This helped them really sort of get excited, have that wow factor about quantum. And we were able to then pair that with having some quantum activities in different camps. And it brought that, like, oh, I'm learning about that really awesome thing we saw earlier in the week. And that was a really exciting opportunity for a lot of people. It's one of the most accessible pieces of quantum outreach, like gear that we have, demo that we have, and we're able to run it fairly often in different contexts. So there have been some really wonderful moments where kids who've seen the levitation track or the ghost train in the science show have then later come up to me at like Science World or at other events, and dragged their parent up and be like, I want to show you the ghost train, I want to show you how these magnets work. And it's a really memorable way to get a lot of them engaged. Lastly, in 2024, one of the big highlights was launching our third MOOC. This was a real passion project of mine because I wanted to challenge myself and my team to figure out if we could do an introduction to quantum mechanics in a way that was extremely low math and extremely applied. So really focused on how things work at a conceptual level, as well as what that means and like how it works in a broader context. This has been really, really cool. A lot of the people we've had enrolled specifically in this introduction to applied quantum mechanics self-report having education levels of only high school or lower. And in our feedback survey, we've received things from people as young as 10 years old who were so happy that they found a course where they could learn about something, but weren't bogged down in just, math and notation they didn't understand yet. So that's been a really, really cool opportunity and something that we're sort of continuing to build on going into the future. last 2 years we're looking at here before we switch into our programs and pedagogy. 2025, we've been expanding all of our programming, trying to continue this. It is the year of quantum after all, and we want to make sure we're having a lot of impact in a year so thematic. So we launched the Quantum Arcade, which is an online hub for video games that use quantum mechanics in their gameplay. We've run that in camps. It's been awesome. We've run that in workshops. It's been awesome. The kids really enjoy it. They grasp the concepts really quickly, and it's a really, really cool gateway for them to start asking more complicated questions. We've also been able to partner with campus tours, specifically Indigenous student campus tours. And so we've been doing tours of the Quantum Matter Institute, as well as, again, running that levitation track demo. It's been awesome. And then I'm dipping my toes in a bit more into the international this year. We had it a little bit with the US in 2023, but now working more with the Swiss and French consulates, as well as getting to a talk like this, which I'm very grateful for. And now looking at the future, because 2026 is currently on our doorstep. This year, through the UBC Extended Learning Program, we've actually had an opportunity to launch a micro-credential specific to foundational understanding in quantum, as well as quantum preparedness in different industries. And I'll talk a bit more about that later in the talk. We're looking also at doing summer courses for international students. So people who are traveling to Canada for a month or two in the summer as part of their undergraduate, and they want to take specific focus courses. And as always, we're expanding our workshops, expanding our summer camp programs, making sure we're reaching as many kids as possible with meaningful learning in quantum. Thank you. I know that was a lot of background really quickly. So jumping now into sort of our pedagogy and our programs, how do we sort of approach this difficult, well, seemingly difficult topic with a young group? So the first thing that's so important is it has to be fun. If it feels like a lecture, the kids will tune out. Even the oldest students who are so keen. Our guideline, as short as it sounds, is it's their grade in minutes is how long you can hold attention with no changes. So if you have a grade 5 classroom, you have 5 minutes of talking time before you need to ask engaging questions. You need to show them something. There needs to be an opportunity for them to try the next step if they're building something. That's your guideline. With, grade 10s, you have 10 minutes before you need to have questions, demos, hands-on, something there. It keeps it really fresh. It also makes sure that your whole classroom is moving at a similar pace, and it gives you opportunities to have more frequent check-ins depending on how old the grade is. Step 2, it needs to be inclusive. All students should have ways to engage with the content and see themselves in quantum. So this isn't only approaching multiple modalities in learning and thinking about hands-on, thinking about videos, thinking about coding, thinking about different collaborations. Also considering the content that you're using in your classroom, and if there are role models or examples of people from a bunch of different backgrounds that kids can see themselves in. Helps a lot, makes kids really relate more to the scientists or to the research that's happening, and keeps them really engaged if they have more of a what we call STEM identity. Part 3 is we're looking at, as difficult as it can be for quantum, trying to find something intuitive. One of the great bits about working with particularly young kids is that they don't have rigid conceptions of how things, quote unquote, should work at this point. And so if you give them a really interesting or sort of heart of a concept that they can go, oh, aha, I understand how this works, you get really, really engaged students who find new ways to explain things to each other. And you don't get bogged down in some of the particularly really crunchy technicalities. An example of this that I find really useful is in the Quantum Arcade I mentioned before, we have quantum video games or video games that use quantum mechanics in their gameplay. One of the ones I think is coolest is we have if you've ever played the game 2048, it's a tile combination game with the goal of doubling tiles until one of them has the value 2048. And in it, we have a mechanic that uses tunneling. And so depending on if you have a tile here and a tile here that are the same value and something different in the middle, there's a probability your tiles can combine through it, which they couldn't do classically. And a lot of the kids immediately, once they've seen this, will start playing as though they should account for tunneling in their overall board movement. Um, and is that an exact model of tunneling? Not necessarily. But is it something that's really useful for them to think about um how something could move through a barrier it's otherwise not supposed to be able to do? Yes, and you open a really cool gateway for conversation. Lastly, I'm a huge proponent of having things that are hands-on, interactive. It doesn't have to just be building things out of, cardboard and craft supplies. It can also be code. It can be different models if there's sort of, dioramas or things. I think having something directly kids can ground their understanding in, particularly with something like quantum, where if you're studying biology, you can go to the park and look at a bunch of different things or, large scale biology. When you're studying quantum, it's harder to say, and I have for you here photons in a laser. That you need to give them something directly to relate with. For instance, a laser. But instead of showing them a model of an atom or a model of a particle and being like, this is something that exists all around you, but you cannot see. So I really am a huge proponent of trying to have things really interactive, hands-on, give them something to work with so that they can ground that understanding. And so this is a summary page for all of the programs that we do. I'm going to go through these fairly quickly just to cover all the different modalities that we have tried for quantum and what has really stuck. So our bread and butter is summer camps. Yeah, previously online, now fully in person. They're week-long, full-day camps, 20 to 25 students, very typical classroom setup. And so for this, again, talking about the sort of wraparound supports, I really like having core quantum concepts alongside fundamentals in coding, physics, and engineering design principles so that it doesn't exist in a vacuum and quantum is really grounded in the real world. And then, yeah, the levitation track demos for science show, you can see here, this is the track. And in this, there is a puck of YBCO, a superconductor that is cooling in some liquid nitrogen. Here I'm showing them that if you drop a magnet down a copper tube, it goes really slowly. Next, we do local events. So these are full days, 60 students. We dive into one topic all day long through a couple different activities. These are really awesome to collaborate with partner organizations through. Our most recent one, we were working with a physicist from France, and the French consulate brought him over to look at like quantum communication and how we talk about quantum, but also how we look at communication as in relaying of information and how we can keep that really secure long term. Next is our in-STEM programming. So all of our Indigenous programming is under the category of in-STEM or Indigenous STEM. So working with community partners to deliver STEM programming there. So a lot of our in-STEM programming is actually what we call land-based. And so our instructors are out camping with the kids by a lake for the week. And we need to adapt our quantum curriculum to that. This has also been campus tours for visiting students, as well as just supporting access. Sometimes the best things we can do, because my team specifically is not an expert in, Indigenous knowledge or in those specific community dynamics, but we do have folks who have longer term established partnerships with people and are designing that specific programming. And so sometimes the best thing my team can do is say, okay, well, what's the one thing we could do that would really help you? And they might, most recently it was, we could really use 2 iPads so we can show them more coding stuff when we are away from the school, because the school has all the computers and, people don't, either don't have or don't want to bring a personal computer to camp. But if we had an iPad, we could show them a bunch of stuff and we could do a bunch more tech-focused activities when we are doing land-based programming. And so sometimes that's the things that my team just does is like, okay, we'll figure out how to get you two iPads so that you can do do more programming during your camp. In-school workshops, yeah, schools invite us to their classroom for sort of 75 to 90 minutes, depending on the school schedule. We focus on one idea or one activity. And so currently our workshops are a quantum optics workshop, and then we have one that is gamified superposition. It is the game Battleships, but with quantum rules, and gives the kids opportunity to really explore what it means to have uncertainty in position, which is really cool. Then yeah, Quantum Arcade. Currently, the 3 games on there. We have a 4th game under development right now. We're also running a nationwide game jam in Canada right now to get more kids into developing games as well as using quantum mechanics in their gameplay. I'm very proud of the Quantum Arcade. It's awesome. It's free. It's accessible. It's compatible for phone, tablet, computer. And it's been a really great teaching tool and a way to get kids to continue their quantum learning at home. When they leave camp, this is always available for them. It's always there. And lots of kids have come back and been like, oh, I was playing these games like last night during my, allotted screen time. And that gave them a chance to keep learning in a way that felt really fun. Next is our general public outreach. So we have open sessions to attend for anyone to learn from a whole variety of experts. Science World is our sort of like go-to, I guess it's like science. There's like a whole bunch of different experiments that are there. There's people to talk to about all the different like experiments that are through the whole place. There's lots of interactive stuff. It's great for families. And we've done collaborations with them. I'm actually going there this upcoming Saturday to run the track and talk to a bunch of people about quantum. We do career awareness and information as well. So sort of helping highlight different programs, different internships, as well as information on just like, okay, if you want to get started in quantum, maybe what do you need? Like, where are you currently? Where do you want to go and what those middle blocks are? And then doing conference keynotes and presentations. And then lastly, or not lastly, but near the end, we've got these MOOCs, these Massive Online Open Course. So we have revamped, reworked quantum computing for your classroom. That's coming again soon. And then we've got Introduction to Quantum Computing and Introduction to Quantum Mechanics. This has laid the groundwork for our upcoming micro credentials, and I want to continue to develop and publish these. I think they're extremely accessible, they're extremely helpful, and you can reach a lot of people with good quality content. Alongside that, the pandemic has shifted everything, and you always need to continue to have online programming options. So we've done guest talks with other STEM outreach groups. We did the master class, and then we did an iteration of the same content where there was a 4-credit high school course offered through the University of Ottawa in 2022. University of Ottawa has a really cool program where high schoolers can sign up to take college courses at a really discounted rate as like while they're still in high school. And so we ran the introduction to quantum computing through there and then further refined that content, made it more adult focused than kid focused. And then that became our introduction to quantum computing MOOC. And then we also do National Cyber Day. So in Canada, we have a group called Knowledge Flow, and every year they run a massive awareness campaign called National Cyber Day. It's despite being called National Cyber Day, it is a week long, and each day has its own theme of different, specifically cybersecurity and other high tech materials and concepts that teachers can bring into their classrooms. There is lesson plans included, there's games included, there's background information for parents, for students. And it's all designed to be extremely, the teachers can pick it up and teach it immediately. There is slide decks built, there is, a lesson plan built, there is an assignment built, everything is ready to go. to be able to more easily include cybersecurity in all of its forms in their classroom. And so for the last 2 years, we've been included looking at quantum as how it relates to cybersecurity. So through teaching the kids about Shor's algorithm, understanding how quantum cryptography kind of works through cool different activities, as well as this is how we launched our game jam this year. This whole year was themed as a very spy dossier theme, which is why this has, its little confidential sticker on it and everything. And last year there was 11,000 youth across the country who were registered for, had teachers registered for all of the National Cyber Day programming. This year we're up to 13,000 folks directly registered and engaged through this initiative. It's a huge effort by their team and really, really awesome. Helps get a lot of great content into a lot of people's hands. And now moving into the last sort of 10 minutes of this talk, I want to talk about focus groups and why we have programming for specific demographics. So we have, it's 3 pillars because I like the format of this slide, but fundamentally underserved communities is a whole wide range. So first of all, we look at support for Indigenous youth, having programs for K-12 the whole way through. We have paid internship opportunities through our InSTEM team because Indigenous youth are the fastest growing group in Canada, but they are significantly underrepresented in post-secondary education. And for a lot of communities, depending on where they are, rural remote access to things, even like good enough internet to do certain things, can be really hard to come by. And so really important for us to partner with Indigenous communities, not to just show up and do whatever we want, but make sure we're tailoring the program to what their requests are and let them lead that process so that we can help support more Indigenous voices in STEM. Next, we have our National Girls Program. Girls can be pushed away from STEM as young as age 6 when you look at reports of how students start to classify things like math. Kindergartners and grade 1s will start to tell you that math is for boys, which is kind of heartbreaking considering how fundamental that is to them pursuing STEM careers and having passion for math and everything that goes along with it. And so we have explicitly girl-focused spaces with role models and mentors to help support them on their path. And having just a lot of opportunities for them to continue to grow and hopefully understand that STEM is for them too. And then our underserved communities, we have a whole wide range. So I'll jump to the slide that contains that. We partner with different Black youth programs to, again, help increase representation of Black youth in STEM and in post-secondary. For a lot of our, depending on where schools are in the Lower Mainland surrounding Vancouver, not all schools have the same access to funding. And so we offer free workshops, especially tech-focused workshops. We try to help inner city schools in that way. For camps, we also have a bursary program. And like last year, we gave away over $60,000 of free camps programming because everyone should get a chance to engage with STEM. And if we can remove that barrier for people, we should. Again, rural remote communities bringing STEM to folks who may not have access or who have just never had someone bring that particular activity or field to them before. And then we also work with the Canucks Autism Network because we want to support all types of learners in their STEM explorations and give a wide range of people access to something that can be really empowering and really exciting. And a lot of this, you may have noticed through my talk, is in Canada, we use EDI. I think in the States, it's DEI. But I want to sort of break down why I think this is important and sort of the direct results we can see from it. So why I think this matters, I describe it as diversity is something you observe. Inclusion is action you take. Equity is how you take that action. And then indigeneity is the connection between people, land, and knowledge. And so sort of combining this all together is how we can look at having really strong robust principles for learning that make it better for everybody. And we are personally and as an organization really dedicated to removing barriers for all students to engage in STEM and finding that sense of wonder, belonging, and curiosity in STEM fields. And for organizations, I did some research on this going into this because as much as I earnestly believe it to be true, I wanted to be able to show you some good results for it as well. There's an increase in diversity when you have an increase in leadership. That starts quite young, as well as fostering diverse teams shows in so diverse here meaning gender diverse and racially or ethnically diverse. You have increase in business ethics, corporate citizenship and philanthropy, talent attraction and retention, good labor practices, being more green as a company, as well as climate strategy. Put quite simply, diverse teams yield better results. So there's a 2022 report from McKinsey called the Diversity Matters report, which shows that increased likelihood of companies with high ethnic diversity outperforming those with low diversity, as well as companies with strong representations of women are much more likely to financially outperform those with lower percentages. So fundamentally, having strong, diverse teams and having a lot of voices coming to the table means that you're going to have more robust teams, you're going to have more robust outputs, and more people are going to find their passion, their sense of belonging in fields like STEM. So ways that we sort of approach bringing that in the classroom, again, multiple modalities, looking at lots of different ways people can engage with the material, looking at demographics, so understanding who is in your class and who isn't in your class. So what do your learners need? And then if you're looking at a group and you're like, we aren't really getting, for example, a ton of girls engaging in our coding camp. Well, how do you engage new learners? I also like the idea of connecting concepts to more than one other idea. So if you're looking for analogies, trying to find things that can be cultural, natural, artistic, historic, and having a variety of featured voices and examples. These are just some ways that can really help make a learning experience sort of more vibrant and more connected for everybody. And as we come into the end here, I want to give you a few just sort of feel-good success stories, some lovely quotes. So the first one I mentioned was from a young student who couldn't find other courses that fit their previous knowledge. There was access to practice questions and gave someone an opportunity who may not have, for instance, taken physics in high school, a chance to really engage with quantum and learn a lot about it and then sort of ignite that passion to keep going. Next, it's also important to highlight how important things like a bursary program is. And we were able to, all the kids that were able to support continue going into STEM because we can lower that barrier for them and help them to engage. And so going forward, having talked all about the things that we do or have done, what's next? We are continuing our biggest flagship programs. We're doing our workshops, we're doing our camps, we're continuing in STEM travel. We have a really awesome opportunity to go to the Gathering Our Voices conference this year, which is a large conference for Indigenous youth in BC. We have a club that we're launching for the first time. So we'll have 10 sessions covering 10 topics in emerging technologies with a group of grade 10 to 12s from January to April. I'm super excited about this. You get to have really sort of deep understanding of learning when they get this repeated engagement throughout the term. Our local events are continuing. Again, I mentioned the partnership we have this upcoming Saturday with Science World. I'm super excited about. Our next game is launching before the end of this calendar year, which is really exciting. And so lots of other connections to bring in hosting other teams' games, as well as continue to develop our own games, continue to make this an educator resource. Our micro-credential is going to launch in early summer 2026. So that'll be offered through the UBC EXL program. And then again, working with Vancouver summer programs to bring international university students more access to quantum readiness, as well as what it means to potentially work in quantum in the future. And then, as always, there are things I don't even know about yet that I'm sure I'll be tackling in the next year. So, this is my open call to you that if you have cool ideas, I'm always open to a Zoom call. Let's try to bring something awesome to life. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to take them now.
Hi, Hela. It's really interesting all your initiatives and program and how you impact in the communities more desplaced. I don't know how to say. Dr. Braulio, we can hear you, Doctor. Well, I have some questions in the chat.
Awesome. Let's go for it.
Uh, what inspired you personally to start diversifying talent in emerging technology? Was there a specific moment or experience that made you realize how much representation matters?
Awesome. Two great questions. So while I was working with, so the program was initially called Diversifying Talent in Quantum Computing, and that program started about a year and a half before I joined as the program manager. But the longer I was working in it, I realized that you couldn't teach quantum in a vacuum. And I really wanted to bring in more emerging technologies and to look at it sort of more comprehensive landscape of like what it means to be on the cutting edge of technologies, as well as it was a request we had gotten from a lot of teachers because we love quantum and we love what you've been doing, but we need like a lot of, particularly in BC, high school teachers just don't have a lot of opportunity to actively bring in new things to their classrooms on their own because they have so much curriculum they already have to teach. So this was an awesome opportunity for us to be able to um, give educators more access to things that they were really hoping for. And just, yeah, the more I was learning about quantum, I was like, well, if we want to talk about quantum, then we really also kind of have to talk about quantum computers. We really need to talk about quantum materials. And if we're talking about quantum materials, and there's some really cool stuff you can do in chemistry. And also, if you're trying to teach about quantum computing, you need to understand quantum mechanics. But if you've never taken physics, how are you supposed to get into this? And so I was looking at sort of the ever expanding web of what we needed to actually really get to the heart of it and was like, well, let's just cover it all. And then the next question was, how did I like personally come to the conclusion that like representation was so important, or if there was a specific standout moment for me? Um, so I'm from a very small town in Canada. Um, my hometown population crossed 1,000 people while I lived there. And so I really didn't have access to much in science at all growing up. We had the courses that were offered in our high school. Our high school was for everybody within a 45-minute driving radius of us. And, you know, there was me and three other girls in physics 12. And I had a really mean teacher, honestly, um, who was pretty I had the opposite of a good role model and someone who was took a lot of time out of his day to tell us that we were never going to go anywhere in physics and this wasn't for us. And then when I got to university, this was sort of my personal moment was I had an absolutely incredible group of first year professors who genuinely believed in me and believed in all like so many of my classmates who'd had similar experiences. So the representation of getting out of a tiny, tiny town and seeing people thrive from a huge variety of different backgrounds and bringing their own experiences to the table and sharing their perspectives was just so incredible. But I think it's also, you know, it's a core tenet in a lot of how I want to live and how I want to run programs. Like again, I was one of the only girls doing a lot of the things I was doing, and that's just one facet of an identity. And so being able to then now that I'm in a position, I can open doors to an even wider variety of people. I kind of feel that it's my moral obligation that I need to make sure more people have the opportunities that I had, as they fought tooth and nail for them. And now I want people to not have to do that. I want things to be accessible and easier for people to get into.
Thank you, Ella. We have another question. You have worked closely with young people from unrepresented backgrounds. What story or moment has stayed with you as a proof that your work is making a difference?
Oh, there's one that immediately jumps out. I was with our in STEM instructors. I was in the school in a community called tsleil which is in it's close to North Vancouver, but um the band actually runs the school. And I was there and I was with a community or a classroom of grade 5 and 6 students, and I was teaching them the idea of basically solving. I was I've had much abstracted superposition, and I was teaching them about how quantum computers versus classical solve problems as analogies of different ways of solving mazes. And there was a little girl who was probably maybe 10 or 11 years old who started like helping her friends, and she got really into it. We had these little robots called spheros, and we were using them to solve these mazes in different ways, and she got it so fast and she was so engaged, and she was helping all of her friends solve problems because they wanted, basically the analogy was like, if a classical computer isn't learning from its processes, if you're solving a maze that has 100 routes, you have to try 50 times to get the right answer to get out the other side of the maze. But, quantum computers, if you can solve a bunch of routes simultaneously and then look at how, look at sort of shared common pathways, instead of solving an n over 2, you can solve it in root of n time. That's the gist of it. And she got all of her friends together really quickly and was like, we shouldn't be solving the maze one at a time. Can we, like, let's all work together? And they, like, totally took over this whole maze we had drawn on the floor in masking tape, and absolutely, like, we're getting all their robots through it and learning how to code. And I've never seen, like, it was one of the first times I'd been in a classroom where, like, I just sort of got to sit back and just watch them, like, run. Um, and it was so exciting. And I've seen that kiddo again at other events since then. And she's always so engaged and so happy. And it's just like, it was so cool to watch someone totally get it and then, you know, be the person to then get her friends into it and get to do even more. Um, so that was really exciting.
Thank you, Ella. I have another question. Your initiative in Canada has created opportunities for underrepresented demographic in STEAM. What key lessons from your work could be adapted to countries like Mexico or others in Latin America to engage youth in quantum and emerging technologies?
Oh, great question. I think a lot of the sort of core tenets can be very similar, like, you know, keeping it fun, engaging, hands-on, intuitive, making connections to different things in their lives. I think that's all pretty universal. I think that's things that can definitely be brought forward. I think in terms of like specific modalities of teaching, I think it's looking at sort of the community you want to engage with, and sometimes just asking like what works best for them. So for us, for different things, like, we know that purely through just trial error and working with different groups, like, summer camps and workshops go really well in Vancouver, and in Surrey, which is a nearby city. They're super hungry for tech workshops and for tech events. And we found that out because the first time we were like able to you sort of ask and be like, okay, we've got space. We want to try to hire, we want to try to run a tech event. What do you guys think? Community was really loud about what they wanted and it sold out really fast. And by sold out, the event was $5 and it was full in like 2 or 3 days for 60 students. So I think, yeah, a lot of those sort of key tenets of engaging, hands-on, fun, intuitive, exploratory, I think that's all universal. And I think just honestly working with whatever sort of area, like if there's like a specific school you want to work with, if there's a community you're interested in, being open to just asking and seeing what people want and testing out different things. Also, all of our content is open source, free to use. So if you want, I can like after this, I can send Braulio like a bunch of previous activities we've done and like feel free to take those and run and cut them apart and do whatever you want. Um and just like have fun with it. Um but yeah, my biggest things are like core approaches I would keep pretty similar and then modalities ask people what they're interested in terms of formats and don't be afraid to try out a couple different things and see what really works for your groups.
Okay, thank you, Ella. We will appreciate if you could share that with Braulio to
Yeah, of course.
replicate it here in Mexico.
Mm-hmm.
Have another question. In your experience, how can role models, especially women and minorities in STEAM, change the perception of what a scientist or engineer looks like?
Oh, this is a great question, one that I'm really excited to talk about. So yeah, there's a really awesome experiment you can do with a classroom full of kids, and it's on the first day of camp. You ask them to draw a scientist, and most people, or like most kids at that point, essentially draw like a caricature of Einstein, big frizzy hair, lab coat, usually a white man. And throughout the week, if your camp instructors, for example, are women or people of color or disabled or anything like that, and you also bring in different examples of role models throughout sort of how you talk about things, if you're um, in your different subjects, sort of making an effort to find cool examples of people in those fields with those different backgrounds. And then again, on the Friday, if you ask your kids to draw a scientist, you will get a way wider range of results in terms of what they think a scientist looks like. So this all sort of goes back to like what our program calls like STEM identity and like understanding if there is a place for you in science. And a big part of that can just be, yeah, having people who look like you have like a background similar to yours that you relate to in some way. It was huge for me to go to university and have one of my first year profs also be from, a really small town and us talking about, even just like being able to like relate to things over like, yeah, the culture shock of the residence I moved into at UBC had more people in it than the town I grew up in. And that was really startling, but I had someone I could talk to about it. And then I felt like, okay, no, if you did it, I can also do it. And yeah, I think it's just having role models that sort of accurately depict the incredibly wide range of people you get in the world helps then that wide range of youth also look at STEM and go, well, I don't have to be the first one or it's not for me because there's no one like me there. It makes it feel approachable and familiar and somewhere that they belong.
Okay. Have another question. What role do industry partners like IBM, EQM, or NVIDIA play in promoting diversity and supporting early education efforts in your programs?
Great question. It totally depends. Sometimes We've had partners who want to support our program, but they can't spare any people to sort of be directly involved in it. And cash is king. Sometimes it's just being able to like fund things so we can pay our instructors and continue to have free programs, which is awesome. That goes a long way. Not to be, I know it's uncomfortable to talk about money, but sometimes yeah, people be like, we really want to give you $5,000 and that's what we can do right now. And I'm like, I will absolutely turn that into, a bunch of kids going to summer camp. And that's great. It's awesome when different companies can also help us get access to stuff. Like so for example, D-Wave, quantum computing company in Canada, um, they very kindly gift us 10 minutes of computing time a month on their LEAP system. And so when I'm showing kids demos of different things, I can actually run it through a quantum system and show them that. And that's really cool for a lot of them because they get to see like this super high tech back end of something because I can show them how it all works. That's really cool. Mentorship is great. Or like giving access to like, we've had the Microsoft office has taken a bunch of our kids for a tour, for example. And that was really exciting getting to talk to like a lot more of the scientists there. Um, yeah, I think, and then the other thing we do with them is a lot of partnerships for events. So previously we've done an event we had with IBM, and they had 2 or 3 of their staff actually come out to our event. We were hosting it in Surrey. Our Surrey kids are ravenous for STEM workshops and for tech in particular. So we had 3 scientists from IBM come out and they ran a really cool coding activity with the kids, um, which was great because then they could sort of help mentor them through a bunch of stuff. There was 2 women and a man who came out, um, and yeah, did all this coding with the kids directly, which was super cool. And we got really great feedback from like the parents and the students as well, from that event. So summary, um, every nonprofit in education needs funding. It's always helpful. Donating time and resources to things, incredibly helpful. Um, showing up for groups if they're looking to have an event or they're looking for a mentor or a speaker, even. Sometimes at our events, we have people who come out for like 45 minutes just to talk with kids over lunch, and that's their engagement for the day, but it goes a long way in terms of having someone for the kids to talk to. Yeah, there's a bunch of different things we can do.
Thank you, Ella. I have a final question. Uh, 2 questions.
Mhm.
Have you do balance between teaching technical content like coding or quantum concepts and soft skills like leadership, confidence, and collaboration when working with unrepresented youth?
Great question. I think, oh, how do I try to describe this? That's such a good question. I think there's a bunch of parts to this. One of the things is honestly helping to like lead by example. So all of our instructors at Gearing Up for summer camps, for workshops, for everything, we have a pretty intensive training process we go through with everybody. And a lot of that is to help them be better leaders in their classroom and to help lead by example and um, sort of empower the kids in their class to um, be their best selves and do their best work. So that's a big part of it is we put a lot of work into our instructing teams and making sure that we really trust everyone who's at the helm of our classrooms. um, I think also you can't really learn well if you're engaging from a place of like a lot of reticence or like uncomfortability. So I think also putting in the work at the start of a week or the start of a workshop to try to make everyone in your class feel like comfortable and interested in the topic, that goes a long way as well. And then being open and being like flexible and kind and like when you're going through content or when you're working with people, like really uplifting their ideas and being really open to what people have to say, I found be really good. And also sometimes it's being willing just to completely throw your lesson plan out the window and be like, well, they are insanely engaged in this one thing, and I had planned to also get to this other activity, but like everyone wants to keep doing this, and I need to listen to them. And so I think there's a mixture of that as well. Um, and that's not just for underrepresented youth, that's for everybody. It's just being really open to listening to your classroom, leading by example, having really good faith in your instructor team that they're putting their best foot forward and making sure that, in how you talk to your kids, you're really like uplifting their ideas and making them feel heard. Yeah.
Thank you. And finally, what message would you share with young students from Mexico and Latin America who dream of joining the quantum file but doubt whether there is a place for them?
Oh, that's so sweet. My message would be I'm so happy you want to be here and I want you to be here. I think that the best possible future for quantum is one where everyone who wants to be in it has a space for them. And I would be so happy to be a small part of making that possible um, for youth in Mexico and Latin America. That would be phenomenal. I think the kids, like the youth, are our future, and that's all youth. That's the youth from everywhere. So I'm just, it's a, my message would be like, here, pulls up metaphorical chair. This is for you. You deserve to be here. I want you to be here. And the future is in your very good hands.
Thank you, Ella. Really, thank you really very much for sharing with all of us this initiative that you coordinate and participate to spread quantum education and how you have managed and impact so many young people. Your inclusive approach is truly inspiring and represent a role model for the global quantum community. We hope to meet you again. And thank you again.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Have a great rest of your days.
See you.
Bye bye.